Hello listeners, welcome back. It is part 2 of our Game of the Year 2020 extravaganza, which isn't quite the extravaganza it was last year. We're trying to keep things a bit more contained, as you may have noticed with part 1, but we have a much bigger group of people here today, so who knows how it's going to go. But welcome back. The conversation continues. I'm, as always, joined by my lovely co-host, Jono Logan.
Hello, everybody.
Hello, Jono. I'm just going to say it for them. I'm assuming that everyone on the podcast that's listening is polite, so there we go. And then we have a rare occasion where everybody today is new. No one was able to come back from yesterday. They just didn't like us. Who knows? No, I kid. But we just have a lot of new faces at the site over this past year, actually. We've done a good hiring drive, but a lot of folks came out for the first time to discuss things on the Game of the Year episode, so I'm happy to have a bunch of new faces and also some special guests, which we'll get to in a moment. But first of all, I may or may not butcher your name, I apologize, but Abe Kobylanski is joining us on the mic.
That's me.
That's you. Welcome. Thank you so much for being on the podcast for the first time. And that same goes to Wes Iliff.
Hello, everybody.
Welcome, Wes, to the podcast. Our very prolific, as we usually extol her virtues, Audra Bowling, reviewing all the things.
Nice to be here.
Welcome on. It's really great to have you finally. And for the first time since we've, joined forces with them and been cross-promoting and such, Hat and Eric of the Phoenix Edge podcast are here to join us on Random Encounter.
Hello. Thank you for having us.
Hello, everyone.
A was Hat, B was Eric, and for those who may or may not listen to the podcast and not know them by voice just yet.
That's a good call.
But the better sounding one is Eric.
But thank you both for being on for the first time. It's really great to get you on here and talk about a lot of what was going on this year.
Perfect. Should be exciting.
Yeah.
I'm excited.
Yeah, I'm glad to be on.
I will take it. So we're back to talk about more games. Last episode was very heavy on our big 3 contenders in 2020, which was Final Fantasy VII-R, 13 Sentinels, Aegis Rim, or as I amusingly named it in the docs, Regis for some reason. So then it just had to become Regis Philpman Rim, which that's a whole different joke, which we won't go down that rabbit hole. And we had Hades, of course, which was another big contender. All 3 stunning games in their own rights. And it was, some pretty contentious discussion, I guess, over how these things could have landed. But it's also kind of like arguing apples and oranges, when you say, Jono.
I agree. Also, Alana had for someone who gave the game a 90 in her review and just loves it, she had throwing some fireballs about Final Fantasy VII-R yesterday.
Well, I think it's valid, the argument that the nostalgia, of the moment of being in it, it definitely sweeps you in. And I mean, I can argue that now more accurately since I've been playing it. It definitely can pick you right up and take you right into its warm embrace and be like, everything's great, right? And you're like, yeah, absolutely, Final Fantasy VII. But then once you leave it for a bit, you realize, oh, maybe it wasn't so great. But, it still had some good things. It paid for dinner, whatever.
I mean, that's exactly what I was pretty much talking about when we were on our podcast. I was talking about how much, we loved it. But we also had our grievances with it, and we're worried, and we're always making fun of, Nomura's writing, and lo and behold, the first thing is, people are just, criticizing, saying, do you like the game, or do you not like the game? And we're like, no, we love it, it's just, it's definitely not perfect when you look back and, look at everything again, or do a second playthrough.
Absolutely, nothing is perfect, and, that's okay. You can still be a 90.
No one can say it wasn't swinging for the fences the whole time, whether it hit it or not. It tried its hardest at all times.
That's the trick about reviewing games a lot of time, especially really, really good games. The better the game, sometimes the more the flaws stand out.
Yeah.
And I think if you love a series or a game enough, you're willing to point out its major flaws and hoping they do better the next time.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Exactly. There's not just because we have some nitpicks, it doesn't mean the game is a bad game by any way, shape, or form. It's just I think like Jono said, you see the flaws all the more because of how well done everything else is, and that team did an excellent job in that game. There's a reason it won so many awards, right? It's not just because we have little things to pick at. it's the exact thing. Like, you can remember being in school and your teacher picking on you, and it's like, why? And it's like, because I know you're great and you can do better. And it's just like, oh, well, that's kind of nice, but also stop. So it's kind of the same thing here, which I'm sure they will improve.
Yeah, when a game looks this good and you see a texture that looks like it's from the PlayStation 1 original, it makes you go, ooh.
Scratch your head.
I feel like Nomura's gotten a lot of ruler slaps to the wrist.
Yeah. I know we don't want to linger here too long, but it's
it's all good.
It's all also, they have to, it's a bit difficult to try to like sparse between, okay, is this a criticism I have because the game is a remake, or do I have this criticism because as its own separate game on its own 2 feet? And that was something that I had a difficult time doing when I went through it as well, because I had to sit down and realize like a lot of my problems are because it is a remake. And when I look at it as its own separate game, I found that I was much more positive towards it. So it's also got that extra layer of, difficulty to try to talk about it, because there's so many intense feelings about such a beloved game.
Absolutely. Like
decades of baggage.
Exactly. Like we all were saying it before it even came out that it was going to have a hard climb and it was potentially doomed to fail, but it actually rose to the occasion quite spectacularly. Like the fact that it has seen so much success and done so well is just like, you can't help but give a standing ovation to the whole team for pulling off what was probably like the most daunting task the company has faced in like a long time or ever, for that reason, for that matter. And yeah, I think it's great. And I agree. Like it's the same thing even like with Trials of Mana. Again, like how do you weigh it? How do you compare the remake stuff and then take it as a standalone game? And even with Tucker trying to review Cyberpunk, like how do you review that as its own thing and then try not to completely let it get covered by the bad PR? Like you have to take the game in its full context, but it can be hard sometimes to separate it out and just let it be the thing that it is.
Yeah, for sure.
But that being said, Hades and Aegis Rim were also both fantastic games and art pieces of their own, and both present spectacularly as well, but are also completely different. So it's just, then how do you weigh like this amazing epic AAA title? When you were saying how it was making me think too, is like, how do you separate out the AAA-ness, and do you want to rag on it a bit more too? Because, well, it's a big AAA game with like billions and billions of dollars, and you see something like Hades that's also cleaning up awards-wise, and it doesn't have the same clout. It's also hard not to do some comparison there and scratch your head looking at these two games together and why this one doesn't quite perform as well as this one, even though they do.
Well, I mean, those games are much smaller in scope too, so I think that there's
exactly
less room to mess things up. I mean, even if you go back and play the original Final Fantasy VII, I mean, that was a much smaller scoped game as well. So some of the problems that game had were definitely hidden behind the PS1 graphics and just, the generation that it's from. So I mean, some of these Hades and 13 Sentinels were fantastic, I think, because they kept the scope of what they were trying to do in check. They didn't try to, reach for the stars and fall short, and which is very admirable, too, when a game tries to do that. I definitely respect them for, with the 7 remake in particular, with trying something new. So it's just, it can be really difficult to try to hone in on what's the appropriate way to talk about these things.
Yeah, but that's what we're here to try and do. So let's get into the rest of our list today, because,
Sure.
I know Jono is pretty eager to talk about his game of the year, that won Best Traditional RPG, which I know on the last episode, Zach was saying, for people who weren't there, that it was actually a pretty big debate trying to figure out where Final Fantasy VII R fit, if it was action RPG or traditional RPG, because of some of the mechanics kind of bleed over, but ultimately the site settled on action RPG. And then I guess there's the debate. There's like, I don't know, John, I'll let you come to the fore on this one of, do you think Yakuza Like a Dragon could have gotten edged out if Final Fantasy VII R had been relegated to this category, or do you still think Yakuza kicked its butt?
Again, I haven't played Final Fantasy VII Remake yet. I've
That's
seen a lot
fair.
of it and read a lot of it, so I can't say. I actually do have a hard time imagining that, in terms of being a traditional RPG, that anything would really edge Yakuza Like a Dragon out. Maybe if Final Fantasy VII R was put head to head to it, it would be a coin toss maybe.
Yeah.
That being said, I mean, I've talked about Like a Dragon so much on this podcast, on Retro, on the spoiler cast, to my partner, to you, to basically anyone who is within like a 2-foot radius of me since I played it in November.
I took out an ad space in Nova Scotia. They posted the article on the wall of Abercrombie Video.
Yeah, they really should be giving me. I wonder if they even know that I talk about it on this show. I should mention it the next time I'm there in 2025.
I really hope there's a big vinyl decal of you on the wall, as mentioned on RPG Fans Podcast by Jono Logan.
That'd be great. Has anyone else on this podcast played Yakuza Like a Dragon?
Oh, yes, I have.
Fortunately, no. I haven't played that or other than R yet.
I'm slow rolling Like a Dragon currently, but I'm about halfway through, and I adore the series, so I'm with you.
Sounds awesome.
Yeah, I figured you would be.
I'm trying to go in order, but the furthest I've gotten so far is Yakuza 3, so...
You can play Like a Dragon without playing any of the previous ones. Admittedly, it's not... It's funny. The callbacks and the cameos in Like a Dragon are very, very well done, where none of them feel particularly integral to the plot, but when you see them, you go, yee, look at it, it's Majima. You have that nice little moment. But you can play the game, certainly, without knowing anything about Yakuza. I was talking to Caitlin a few days ago about it, and she said that one of her favorite things about the series, she just started playing Yakuza 0, and she started with, like, Judgment, and then she played Like a Dragon. And one of her favorite things is going back in time and seeing Kamurocho through the ages, and seeing seeing what the city was like in the 1980s or the 90s, or as compared to today. And I think that's something cool that Yakuza Like a Dragon does, which is in the first part of it, it's 94. Is it 94 in the first couple of minutes?
I'd have to
I think
double
it's
check.
1994, or maybe it's it's in the mid 90s. And then you're roaming around the city as almost you remember it from like the first game, and then you are in the modern day. It's a game that really celebrates its history in a way that doesn't feel particularly like you need to know its history to enjoy it. And I think it really does hit a nice sweet spot for newcomers and old fans alike. And in terms of it being a traditional RPG,
yeah, that's what sets it apart, I guess. Like, that's the big debate, but I think would set it apart between, say, Final Fantasy 7R or something like it is just how well it hits those mechanics and such. So
yeah, back when it was in development, I believe there were a few interviews where they said that, well, if the turn-based combat doesn't work out or people just don't like it, we'll just be going back to the brawler style combat in Yakuza 8, and I don't think they're going to. I think they're going to be sticking with the traditional RPG combat, because it has gotten a great reception here and there. I feel like I said, Final Fantasy VII it took up a lot of oxygen in the room, and I feel like Yakuza Like a Dragon is building on the progressive popularity that the Yakuza series seems to be getting in the West. It seems to be slowly, it's been building since Yakuza 0, and I think it's only going to get more so from here. I think Yakuza 8...
It's like a renaissance for it.
Yeah, whenever Yakuza 8 comes out, or whenever it's announced, I think that it's going to be big, and I think that when it does come out, I don't think this is wish casting. I think that when Yakuza 8 does come out, and it's traditional RPG, and it is hopefully to the same quality as Like a Dragon, it's going to be a real debate over what the best RPG of that year is going to be. Unlike Like a Dragon, which for many people it's good, but it's still kind of an afterthought to Final Fantasy VII. But I think the Yakuza series is getting bigger and bigger and bigger in the West, and we'll see how that plays when the sequel's released. But anyway, the point is, Yakuza Like a Dragon is a traditional RPG in the best sense. It uses a lot of Dragon Quest's traditions, tropes, and puts them into the Yakuza universe. The job system, as it exists, I think it magnificently takes just the modern world and modern day jobs and maps them onto traditional RPG archetypes like Black Mage, White Mage, Dark Knight, I guess just regular Knight.
Do they have like regular like analogs, like Salesman is represented as a class? I have never talked about the job system really with you, so I'm curious now.
Yeah, it's more or less they do. There is a character who is an office worker as their class that maps to the kind of ninja that you'd see in the Final Fantasy series. And there are a ton like that.
I really hope you wield a stapler.
Thumbtacks, yep.
The white mage analog is an idol.
Okay, I see. That's cool though.
This is just kind of.
I
this
believe
is kind
Sorry,
of
what was that, Eric?
Mage.
Yeah, this is kind of an observation. Like I said, I haven't played much of the Yakuza games, but the difference between FF7R and I think in that for me, and Jono, maybe you can definitely add more context for me, is I don't think people really had an emotional attachment to the brawler system, because when people phrase Yakuza like up and down for me, or to me, I'm sorry, They always talk about the world, the story, the characters, and stuff like that, and that's where the engaging content is. And the brawler aspect always seems like a secondary thing to them. And that's kind of the same thing with FF7R, but people seem a lot more emotionally attached to Final Fantasy VII's turn-based system. So that left with like a lot of what's the right word? The like feeling like a little hesitant about approaching a new action combat system with it, whereas maybe Yakuza, it's like, oh, well, you know, I didn't really care if the game was a brawler or something before, so I'm more open to the RPG, like, tactical aspect of it this time, as long as my world and story are still intact like the traditional Yakuza games.
I think that's very true for a lot of RPG fans in terms of the combat system, the brawler-style combat system, if not turned them off, at least kept them away from it, because it was an RPG. Yakuza's always been an RPG with its progression system, with its upgrades, with how you level up. But I think that the turn-based or the brawler-based combat did push a lot of people away, just for RPG fans. But I know that there was a lot of controversy about changing over to a turn-based combat system, especially before the game was released, and a lot of people were like, not my Yakuza, and that kind of bullshit on the internet, which is basically what the internet is for. However, I think that now that a lot of people have given Yakuza a try, because the turn-based combat is there, and it's lowered the bar of entry to a lot of RPG fans, I feel like a lot of people will go back now to play some of the earlier games. Like, I like the brawler system. I think it's fun, it's active, and I think that one of the triumphs of Like a Dragon is that it took some of the conventions of that combat system, such as, you know, beating the crap out of people with random bicycles that are laying around around you, and they put it into the turn-based system automatically. Yakuza Like a Dragon, the combat doesn't feel like just a random RPG. It feels like a Yakuza game, but it utilizes the turn-based combat in such a way that the game, I don't want to say that it certainly doesn't perfect the balance, but it hits the balance in such a way that I think that going forward, Judgment is going to be using the brawler-based combat system, and Yakuza will probably stick with the turn-based combat system, at least while they have Ichi as the protagonist.
Right. Well, Wes, it was you who said that you've played the series, or was it Abraham? Which one of you was just getting into it? Sorry, just was trying to...
Yeah.
Wes.
That'd be me.
It was Wes, okay. So, Wes, I was going to ask you then. So, Wes, to ask you, was that like something you were looking forward to, coming from being a fan of the series and then moving into this more traditional RPG kind of setup?
I cannot express how excited I was when I saw that the series was going turn-based, because, you know, I've enjoyed the series ever since, you know, the PS2 origins of it, and I'm not afraid of a beat 'em up. But as soon as we saw that turn-based thing, my entire history flashed behind me, and seeing like the echo to Ichiban's story and like my own personality, you know, kind of being raised on Dragon Quest and having all of those little things factored in. I mean, that's how I learned how to read as a kid, was off of these games. And
it's pretty sweet education.
It's such a crazy trajectory for a series to take right now, when everything's going into action, trying to appeal to a broader base. For a series just as it's hitting its stride in America to say, nah, we're going turn-based. We are going completely left field.
Yeah, it's an interesting rollback.
And to Jono's point, it feels like home. The first time I hit the attack button with Ichiban and he picked up a street sign and got a damage boost, hitting someone with it, I'm like, oh, okay, this is like a warm cup of soup right here. I'm right back where I belong.
Well, to that also, I was going to ask you, since you brought it up, Ichiban Kasuga, who this is his first time, basically, was he ever mentioned anywhere else in the series?
Yeah, actually, he is the main character in essentially Yakuza Online, which is but Yakuza Online is not what you would call a traditional Yakuza game. It's card based. It doesn't use the 3D graphics. It uses 2D, and it's also non-canon at this point. They've retconned it.
It's kind of like an Ichiban fever dream then.
That might be on card.
Par for the course. But Ichiban won our Best Protagonist Award as well. So, yeah, Wes, I was going to ask you just to speak to that, since you seem to have, you're in line with that. And Jono has said good things about Ichiban as well, but just to ask you your opinion and why you're excited to play as Ichiban, why he won Best Protagonist, what sets him apart from some of the other heroes that we've played with this year.
Part of it is because of the history. It's such a perfect way to go if you're going to make this grand swap from action to turn-based. Maybe one of the undersold aspects of that is that you are then turning from a single-character action game to a party-based RPG. So all of a sudden you have all these other characters to interact with. And while Kiryu had this heart that was loving and affectionate and had all of this humanity to him, he was very stoic most of the time. He was journeying on his own on a regular basis, and his interactions with others were alternating between antagonistic and friendly, and he was more of a protector, whereas Ichiban is a lot more bombastic. He has more interactions with his party members. He wants to be friends with everyone in the traditional anime aspect while still being an actual grown adult. And they managed to marry the maturity of Yakuza, where a Yakuza main character has to be able to navigate convincingly this seedy underbelly with the traditional RPG, I'm going to make friends with everybody in the world protagonist. And they made this hard left from Kiryu, but still made him feel like a Yakuza protagonist. And I am so impressed with them pulling that off, dynamically and without really any seams at the edges. It's exciting to play as such a different character, but still feel like, okay, this is still Yakuza.
Nice. It's the more I hear about Ichiban, the more I'm like, gosh, this is how my daughter's going to grow up to be. Just seeing the world through the lens of a game and going to give people notices of we're best friends now. We've upgraded and and I'm just trying to give everything RPG mechanics or whatever. It'll be hilariously great.
Can I just say also with this is that I'm just this really attracted me. This is next on my radar to play, but it really attracted me, the fact that this is a JRPG and it's an older main character. And the older I've gotten a little fatigued with the routine younger characters.
14-year-olds.
Yeah, the greatest detective in the land, and they're 10.
You dang kids.
Yeah, it grows a little tiresome. They're still good games, but it's just refreshing to have someone that's a little bit older and, a little bit more life experience as the protagonist of a game. I think that's really, really cool.
I do.
I was actually just explaining that to Gwen last night.
Yeah.
That most RPG anime heroes are in their teens and you're quote unquote old as soon as you hit your 20s. But sorry, you were saying, Audra?
1 foot in the grave.
I agree, just mostly because I guess I say this as someone who's much older now than these characters. It just sometimes takes me out of it when I find out this 14-year-old is doing things that even me as a 32-year-old man does not feel like he's mature enough to take on this kind of responsibility, especially in something like FF8, where all these characters look like they're in their mid-20s or so, and they're all ages 15 to 18. And I'm like, what?
It's basically just a quote-unquote teen special where all the quote-unquote teens are actually in their 20s as actors.
Like a CW show.
I can see you, party of 5.
You must be at least 38 years old to fight God, basically.
The joke that my wife and I always have, it's always Raven from Tales of Vesperia, because he is, every other line is him calling himself the old man or someone else calling him the old man, and then I look and, oh god, I'm the same age as him. He is a 35-year-old and he is the old man.
Yeah, that's basically how this goes. You're ancient if you hit your 30s in an anime RPG.
But then you look up the ages that they're supposed to be, like he just pointed out, and it's just that's not how old they are. There's no way, So it's kind of funny how that works out.
To be fair, if you guys have hung out with like anyone who's in their like early to mid 30s, you've hung out with people who are in their early 20s. You really do feel like the old man, though. Like I have sympathy for the 23-year-old who's surrounded by 16-year-olds trying to save the universe, just being like, "Oh, I'm so old."
Hold on, we need to sit down for a second. We've been up for like 30 minutes.
But that is also like, I mean, they haven't quite hit it right, but I feel like some days that is 20-year-olds, because in our 20s, we can get very self-centered and think we've seen it all and done it all. And then once you get to your 30s, you're like, oh gosh, no, I barely knew anything in my 20s. I was an idiot. Now I'm coming into my own. And I'm sure that'll change as we hit a new decade. But it's very much of like the 20s to be very like, we're so important. We're doing all the things. Life is so hard. It's all on our shoulders. And like 30-year-olds are up there like, whatever, grab rosé. We figured it out.
Well, it's weird though, because, and not to take us on too far of a tangent, but I always
it's random encounter. It's what we do.
Hey man, good. I'm glad, because I always felt like age is just a number, and I'm the same age as Eric, 32, and I had this girlfriend, and she has a much younger brother, and I was showing him Final Fantasy 8 for some reason, and it just like hit me over the head like almost like a frying pan, because he looked at it and he thought, these graphics look like crap. And at that point in time, like I always remembered like when I was a kid, like these were amazing, right? And it just like immediately like showed me like the gap of age, like, oh, like this is
the nostalgia lens is gone.
Yeah, this is the type of thing that like separates us, So
yeah.
Anyways.
No, I'll try
it's the same. I'm playing, as Audra knows, I'm playing through Chrono Cross right now, and it does not look great on 1080p TV and trying to like up-res and stretch whatever, but I'm fine with it because it's kind of what I grew up with. But like my wife walked at me once, she's like, how can you play this? Like how? And like she's older than I am, so she's seen these, she knows this, but she hasn't played as regularly, and now compared to what we could play, she's like, it's just so fuzzy and hard to see. How are you doing this?
I mean, to be fair, are you sure she just wasn't talking about you playing Chrono Cross, period?
Oh, cold. Cold as ice.
Shots fired. Audra's gonna fight you.
Well,
oh no, I've been trying Chrono Trigger.
Yeah.
Ooh, which we'll talk about another time. But yeah, that's pretty good times. But anyways, getting us back on path.
Sure.
Like a Dragon was our runner-up for Best RPG, and it sounds like it's for a good reason. Like it definitely was a hard-fought battle. It tied also with 13 Sentinels Aegis Rim, which, again, was a great-looking game. Audra, you've been pumping through a lot of VNs for the site, but did you ever get time to get over to 13 Sentinels?
No, unfortunately. I want to, though. It sounds good.
Is anybody here?
I recorded game footage for that game, so...
That's right, you did. Yeah, what did you... So 13 Sentinels was one of our runners-up as well, and it's done well in some other fields, which we talked about it somewhat the other day, but it was our best graphic adventure VN. How many of those do you dive into yourself?
So that's the thing. I'm not really a big fan of that genre, so I was kind of apprehensive about playing this game, but once I got into it, I was actually surprised. I felt like this was a game that I could actually appreciate. And again, that's coming from someone that usually doesn't like that style of game, but there's a lot more interactivity than I expected. I mean, there was dialogue options, there was searching around the room for clues, and then there was actual battles that would happen that was really exciting. And the art style is just gorgeous. The story is really what just kept me going, because it was just the game starts off with you playing each character and their backstory, and it's a little bit slow. It reminded me of Persona 4, how slow it could be starting off, because it would take a while to get through all these different characters. But every character, by the time we got done with their initial story, it would just leave me on a cliffhanger. And I could not wait to get back to that character. I mean, I was really engrossed with what they were able to achieve here. And the fact that I don't particularly like that type of game, and it sucked me in anyways, I think speaks volumes to how good it was.
And that's kind of what we talked a little bit about yesterday too, is just like, even myself, I've barely played any VNs, to be frank. I mean, I've always heard the virtues of 9.9 3.9. Yeah, I've done a little bit. Most of my graphic adventure days were with the LucasArts games back in the day.
Woo!
And even that, I didn't go too much into it. Thanks, Jono. And a little bit of King's Quest here and there. And of course, I did beat the Trogdor game. For those kids out there who remember good old times of Homestar Runner, which, by the way, has a new title screen.
I was about to say.
I need to go check that out. I'm excited. But it's... either way, like, I haven't gotten into much before, but editing the video, I was saying on the last episode, yeah, that game, it made me want to play it. It looks engrossing. I like how the characters interact. The gameplay for the combat system's really interesting. Audra, you were saying that you are interested in playing it too. What's catching your eye?
The level of interactivity in it is great, especially I've been playing more VNs that have interactivity and player choice and everything, and I really think there's a difference between that and just your linear VNs that don't really give you much option.
Just press X, yeah.
So
Yeah, like the bringing up the little like things for like conversation bubbles, like the finding stuff. Like it is a good combination. It seems of VN, but also graphic adventure with like the click on stuff and see what works, but not quite. It's a little more focused.
Yeah, that was actually my game of the year. It is a absolutely beautiful game. Something wholly unique while still landing within visual novel. You absolutely should. I will recommend this to my dying days now.
My backlog.
Weep for the backlog.
Well, that's awesome. Yeah. So it tied with Yakuza Like a Dragon for one of our best games of 2020, and for good reason. Like that game came out of the gate swinging too. It did well at the awards with a lot of nods to it with the Game Awards, and just throughout the year, a lot of sites gave a lot of good press. Alana loved it. It does what it does well, and I think the developers did a great job of coming out saying, we want to do this really interesting, different game, and here it is. And then they pulled it off, and no one could say otherwise, right? Like, it's so bizarre and strange, a weird mishmash of a few things that you wouldn't think would work, and it does.
Yeah, I'm surprised how much coverage and how much attention the game's been getting, but I think that's really cool. So,
yeah, exactly. Getting back out of that stuff, back to best traditional RPG. Our runner-up is Persona 5 Royal, and has anyone done Persona 5 here? I know Nathan was on yesterday and loved it, and it was definitely a big runner-up for his best game of the year, but I think Aegis Rim edged it out for him.
Yeah, Nathan just released a big preview for Strikers that's coming out in a month or so, and that's exciting if you like Persona 5.
I've played a decent amount of it. I can't say I've beaten it. I got in far enough to develop a relationship with the teacher. So,
yeah. So
and is that as weird as it sounds, or?
Yeah, that was kind of an odd note.
Yes. I guess if it's okay in Japan.
Yeah, I guess now I'm thinking about that. That is kind of strange, huh? But
which is always the thing with those games is where the lines get blurred with that sort of stuff.
Yeah. You know, I didn't play the original game. I only played the Royal version, and my first Persona game was Persona 4, and just because it was such a cherished game, I really gave it a go, and I'm one of the people in the odd minority. It just wasn't for me. It was very... I played maybe 40 hours of it, and I was struggling with it. So I was apprehensive about Persona 5, but I saw it getting all these great reviews. And once the Royal version came out, I thought, okay, I'll give it another go. And a complete 180. I loved it. It was fantastic. It was engaging from the moment it started. The music is great. The UI is just, this is something I think...
It's so sharp.
Yeah,
Stylish AF.
I think Western RPGs just need to take a nod from Persona 5. You open up like something like Cyberpunk or Witcher, and it's just like a rectangle, right? And it's very clunky, and it just pops up. But, Persona just splashes paint and stuff, like words appear, and it's just, it doesn't take you out of the game. And I just loved it. It was a fantastic experience. So I think I might be becoming a Persona fan. I never thought I would say that, but Royal just really turned it around for me. I really enjoyed it.
I have a similar upbringing to you had. I started with Persona 4, and what hooked me into that game particularly was they set up this mystery at the beginning of the game that intrigued me to figure out or go through the game to see what the end is. Because usually I'm not into the social make friends, build up, relationship type things, and if
The
anything,
Persona elements.
if anything, I goof around with it and get like the most awkward choices in the game. But over the course of Persona 4, I grew to love these characters, and I actually felt sad when I got to the end of the game and everything. And jumping into Persona 5, I was and this isn't knocking on Persona 5. This is actually, if anything, not being fair to Persona 5. I went into it thinking that I was going to get a similar setup. There's going to be some mystery involved, and while there is one that eventually builds up throughout the game, I felt like the game kind of built up slow for me. That like I felt like there should have been like some overarching goal to get to the end, but Persona 5 doesn't exactly establish that in the game until a little later. So it was a game that I had to get a little more invested in, because it started feeling like an episodic type game to me, where we go to the next character and just like deal with their problem. But overall, it eventually clashed into that overall arcing narrative, which I thought was really good. And so on my second playthrough or attempt on Persona 5, that better clicked with me, and especially with Royal, when they took away a lot of that stuff I didn't like about the original game. Yeah, I would definitely say Royal just like helps you get into the swing of things a lot better.
I feel like Royal would probably be on this list a lot more if Persona 5 didn't get released a few years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As it is, I mean, it is kind of, there's a lot of new content and stuff like that. It's more of a re-release than anything, but I feel like a lot of people just kind of had the mentality of, even though, some people did not enjoy 5 but loved Royal, it just didn't feel like a new game, but it was a new game, if that makes sense.
And it's hard when there's already some other really solid remakes and re-releases that came out this year that kind of overshadow it quite easily. Because it really did have its time in the sun already, kind of thing, right?
True, and I wouldn't understate the impact that Persona 5 and Persona games in general are having on RPG. Like, I mean, a lot... Yakuza Like a Dragon didn't just pull from Dragon Quest, it's also pulling a fair bit from the Persona games as well in terms of, like, the relationship systems. And I suspect that will go forward for many other series as well. People pay attention, and Persona is another series that seems to be getting more and more traction in the West over the last couple of years, and it could be reaching critical mass pretty soon, I think. I don't know if it'll be Strikers.
Another late bloomer.
It might be the poster child in the West for turn-based RPGs right now, and if it's not, it's going to be in the near future, I feel like.
Yeah,
I mean, Joker's in Smash, so it's made it.
Yeah, if I can give like one more big compliment to Persona 5, even the original one, I think it to this day has some of the best modern turn-based combat, and also has the best modern UI for an RPG I've ever seen. It's so ridiculously stylized that you just can't help and love it.
If we had a best UI category, it would just be like winner,
absolutely,
runner-up, Persona 5
every year.
Although Hades looked really good. I was watching some. They were dropping some like behind the scenes of the making of some of Hades' UI, and it's really sharp looking too. A lot of creativity went into that to make it fit the world. And I think that's the thing, like you were saying, is making it fit the world, which you could argue Cyberpunk was trying to do by making it, like you're engaging with the computer. But I think there's more interesting ways they could have done it.
Cyberpunk was trying to do a lot of things.
Yeah, that's true.
And there's a reason it did not make the list.
Too many things.
Yeah, I would say the only thing with the idea of a Royal version is I'm not really a big fan of that idea. I think it's really cool that they re-released the game, but when the next game comes out, Persona 6, whenever that happens, it's going to cross my mind. Should I buy this or should I just wait? Because
absolutely,
that's always going to be the best version, or at least it has been. So.
And we talked about that with Nathan when Persona 5. I think was it when Persona 5 came out? I think Nathan was saying, he's like, there's going to be a golden or whatever. Like, there's going to be another thing. And then I was just like, so yeah, we had that discussion of, does it behoove you then just to wait on it? But he was saying, he's like, I want to play it and I want to play it now. Like, people will still buy it.
I think we're all going through that right now just because of the generational divide between the last generation of games and the current one, where I like Final Fantasy. There's no reason for me that I shouldn't be able to play Final Fantasy VII Remake right now, except for the fact that I know that within midway through 2021, there's going to be a PlayStation 5 version released with enhanced graphics and maybe some extra features that fix some of the balance issues.
Right, and then of course there'll be the final version where they release all of it as one collection. Then you're like, maybe I'll just get it then.
And they'll add like 2 quests into it or something, and it's just like, oh god.
I think there's an argument to be made with like Dragon Quest XI's that came out recently. I think what may make Persona 5 a little bit of a special subject here is in Japan, Persona 5 actually came out on PS3, and they eventually just got a PS4 port down the line. I don't know if like because of the nature of it being the PS3 version, they decided to create like a full royal PS4 version for people to jump to. I think that just might be some messy detail there. Like I know Dragon Quest XI, they had to build or do a revision of the current engine to get it working on the Switch. Then they ported that to the PS4. But
which I guess is why they couldn't just do a DLC upgrade as opposed to having to release a whole new version.
Yeah. So I think they might have just like all these new assets they made and put into it, they felt like it should have just been like a whole new game in terms of Persona, just because of I don't know, just the nature of the full conversion of the PS3 to PS4. It could just be a lot messier than we think it is over there.
Yeah, but
that's totally fair.
Yeah, anyways, I was going to say, was the amount of money spent for development the same amount as it would have been to develop a completely new Persona game? I mean, probably not. So it's kind of one of those areas where it's like, well, I think both sides have.
Yeah, I definitely understand the against it and for it argument. I guess it's kind of a wait and see how the future, like with Persona 6 handles it. Will they offer DLC to enhance the experience, or will they create another Game of the Year version of it? I think at this point it may be a little hard to justify it, because even Kingdom Hearts, saw that like it's just better. What the content we're putting in should better off be DLC than making an actual final mixed game.
I think this is something you're fighting with just about any game that releases in 2021, 2020, a few years back. Is that are you buying to play the best version of the game, or are you playing to join the zeitgeist when it releases? And that's always going to be the trade-off. I mean, it's the same reason why, and maybe this is a hairy situation, I haven't really read the room yet, but when you're talking about physical versus digital, it's kind of the same problem, that if you buy a physical version of the game, if those servers go offline and you don't have all the updates installed, you're not getting the ideal version of the game. It's not playable to you anyways. So the difference between the best version of the game and the version that you get on launch day is going to be different for almost any game you purchase today. Granted, it's a lot more pronounced when you're paying for it twice, like you are with Persona 5.
Yeah, if you go that route, and then there's the whole landfill issue with the physical copies of, I'm trading in my old copy to get the royal version, and then that's, anyways, there's a whole thing. But yeah, ultimately, it's clearly still a game worth talking about.
Sure. Which
is why it made the list, right?
Yep.
And I think that's a good point, that it is very much a poster child for that. And it and Yakuza kind of crossing over. Yeah, it all stands to reason. Who was our Kentucky Route Zero? That one came out of left field for me.
I
Kentucky
have
Route
never
Zero?
played it. So
who played that?
Eva
I can't
reviewed
remember
it.
how or why that made the list.
Eva reviewed it, I believe. Kentucky Route Zero has been coming out for
a very long time,
a decade now.
That's why I was like, it's still, there's more?
Yeah, it's 5 chapters, but chapter 4 came out and then chapter 5 didn't for a number of years. And this year it got released, and there were full versions that got released on Switch. The TV version, there was a version, there was the one that came out on Steam. Has anyone played it? I haven't played it. I was waiting for chapter 5 to come out to play the entire thing, and then I just didn't.
Yeah, my backlog.
It's on the backlog of Doom for me as well.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I remember Ava's review is pretty solid.
So
2020,
you have played, is it at least the prior ones, is it worth checking out? I guess it's a runner-up, so apparently so. But
As I understand it, it's like a point-and-click adventure game by way of David Lynch.
Yes.
Which, I mean, I would play that. Also, I kind of want David Lynch to design an adventure game now. That could be season... Oh,
That's season 4.
That could be season 4 of Twin Peaks. Just release it in adventure game style. Use pixel art.
Have you guys played any of Swery's games? That's basically what they are.
His brand.
No, I mean, does anyone else? I mean, we have 13 Sentinels and Kentucky Route Zero. Considering that we have Audra on the channel, does anyone else have any opinion what the best visual novel or adventure game would have been in 2020?
Yeah, you've had contentious arguments to this one.
I think 13 Sentinels is the only one I played.
Buried Stars.
Gotcha. Yeah, what was...
Buried Stars is good.
Yeah, because that was the best one you played throughout the year? Because you played... Do you know off the top of your head, Audra, how many you played this year for VNs?
All of them. At least it seems that way based on your review output.
At least 3 or 4.
And so, and what was the one that you said?
Buried Stars.
So yeah, what sets Buried Stars apart? Like, and I guess, yeah, you haven't played 13 Sentinels, but...
It's another one where the interactivity was just off the charts for it, and it had such a psychological, realistic view on, like, following celebrities and everything. It was...
Oh, I get it. Buried Stars, okay.
It was quite good. It was very similar to the Zero Escape route, so I just thought it was really well done.
I mean, I only dipped into Necrobarista, so it got my vote.
Oh, that one looks
this
good.
year, and that was, again, like a very happy discovery, which I put on my individual list. Yeah, it is. It looks lovely, but I think if you're looking for the interactivity, it's kind of lacking.
Yeah.
Like, you just kind of follow along in a lot of ways, but it is a great story. It's very well directed. Like, the more I was watching, I was like, oh, I'd just like to directly translate this to a short film, because it just looks fantastic, and the script writing and the characterization is really well done.
A game that I've been meaning to play that's actually fairly high up on my backlog that I was surprised didn't make it onto any of the our Game of the Year lists, is Paradise Killer.
I was just about to bring that one up.
Talking with Alana about that.
I know that a lot of other outlets and podcasts and stuff like that. It wasn't just like best visual novel, but also like was a contender for their Game of the Year. I know the Besties, which is a great podcast, debated that quite a bit. But it's very high on my list of things to play in 2021, and I was a little surprised it didn't end up somewhere on this list of Game of the Year for us.
And I think it's only because, like, I think just Caitlin had gotten around to it, possibly. It just wasn't enough people who played it.
It's on my backlog.
I just downloaded it last night. Doesn't help us, but it's there.
Did you get the Steam sale?
It grabbed your attention. That's what matters.
Did you get the Steam sale? A Steam sale was announced 30 seconds ago, like a minute and a half ago. It's 30% off.
I nabbed it on Switch. I can't fight the screen share.
That's A-okay. But yeah, it was a good year for VNs. Like, it's every single time Audra finished another one, I was just like, I'm not shocked that there's so many still coming out, because it is it's a low production value game to put out in a lot of ways, but you still have to have such quality writing. Like, it can go so wrong so fast if it's not done well.
And that was probably the one thing with Buried Stars, was I felt like the script translation wasn't quite as good as the overall content for it. Which is,
Okay, so a little lacking in the localization aspect. Yeah, it is what it is. Oh. But moving along, we'll go into our strategy section, which I'm pretty certain nobody here has played Wintermoor Tactics Club.
No, we have not.
No.
Yeah, or Crusader Kings 3. Crusader Kings 3 was a big one that came up from Nathan and took Nathan and Pete Leavitt by surprise. People who've been listening to the podcast know that both of them really enjoyed Crusader Kings 3. Neil took on the indie game that was Wintermoor Tactics Club, and it looks rad. He put it as like kind of an after-school special kind of RPG. My big contender for best strategy RPG, I think I threw Star Renegades into the mix, but I can't remember if it's more traditional or not. I wasn't certain. Maybe I didn't, because I ultimately settled that it was more of a traditional RPG. But it still has like a lot of strategy to it, but it's not like your classic isometric thing, so I think that's why I opted out. I've just been playing a lot of War of the Visions, Final Fantasy X Bravious. So that's been my tactical RPG of 2020.
I really liked the Landgressor 1 and 2 collection.
Oh, that's right.
Mhm.
Yeah, you reviewed those, so that would have been, I guess, yours for the year.
I was tempted to pick that up, but I wasn't happy with the graphics, but it was a pretty good port otherwise.
Yeah, it was pretty solid, I think. I hadn't played the original games, but I quite liked just overall the gameplay itself.
Very cool.
It's not a lot of people talk about strategy RPGs at our site, but we do cover them often enough. But I think we have a small audience of folks at the site who get into them.
I got into War Visions myself because it has really beautiful artwork in it, and
Yeah,
I did
it's
like
great.
the how it's like a spiritual successor to Final Fantasy Tactics.
Yep.
But the story is engaging, and I'm impressed on how high quality it is. Oh man, all the micromanaging you have to do in that game, like in the back end with menus, it got to the point where it got too much for me, and like I just play it sporadically now. But like all the back end stuff you have to do, like especially if you want a new character to put into your roster, man, it is too much.
It's very clunky, which I spoke about back when I first talked about the game. That it's, as much as I liked it, it has a lot of UI bloat that I feel like they really need to figure out and streamline. Final Fantasy Record Keeper is the only other kind of regular mobile game I play alongside Mario Kart Tour, and Final Fantasy Record Keeper was really clunky out the gate too, and then they did a big streamlining process that I really hope they figure out a way to bring to War of the Visions, because that opening screen, it's just like, it just feels like you're walking down like Broadway with like poster bulletin boards everywhere, just kind of yelling at you about various things that you can do, which is great. I appreciate the constant reminders of all the stuff that I can get up to, and like I play it daily. I'm in a guild and such, not that like they're like highly competitive, so to speak, or anything, but it's just, it keeps me on it, and I like it enough that I like doing the daily things. But it's a lot sometimes.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
But you can take it or leave it, what you want to commit to or not in it, which is kind of nice, because like I find it's good, like you were saying, like there is a lot in the back end if you really want to like perform, I guess, in like the multiplayer-ish stuff, so to speak. And not that there's a lot of competitive stuff, but there's just like higher level quests and stuff you can get into by grinding out your characters more. But I think you can get through the story, which is fairly well written on its own, without really doing any of that stuff, which I do like. But it's hard not to ignore all the back end stuff and not feel like that FOMO that you need to get into it, and that can be very overwhelming. But if you are able to push it aside, just playing the story as its own kind of tactic story is actually pretty compelling and stands on its own well.
Absolutely, I 100% agree with that. If you're able to overlook the micromanaging the game has, like there is a compelling story and like well designed characters and something you would
twisted
find,
and harem-y, but
yeah, more what you find akin to like a Matsuno type game. Not exactly like Matsuno, but you can tell the writing and style is very inspired by his type of work.
Are there?
yeah. But I like the adaptation of like the tactic style into the noseless anime into how they've rendered these models and everything is pretty impressive.
Are there microtransactions in that? Because that was one thing I was concerned about that kept me from going further.
There's premium stuff that you can buy if you want, but like I've been playing the game for ages. I would argue I'm like mid-range compared to like some of the people I've seen in like the arena or in our guild battles.
So it's not intrusive.
No, exactly. You don't need it. It can fast forward you. It's like playing Magic the Gathering. You know, you can buy yourself specific really good fancy cards or buy a lot of packs, but you can also still have a fun time playing if you just play it and buy casually.
Interesting.
Yeah, a lot
there's
of
times I really wish I had more visions to unlock some cool characters. Like I really wanted to get Kain when they did the Final Fantasy IV promo, but I was also very focused on throwing all my like they have like a guild that just buys things, and they have the visions, which are the special things that let you unlock the gacha stuff, and you get those drip fed to you, but you can also pay real money to get more, obviously.
Right.
And so I was focusing all of those on. They gave out Cecil for free from Final Fantasy IV, so I was just trying to get Cecil up to max level.
Yeah, I really think that's the way to go, though, is to, make your game playable for everyone. And when microtransactions start becoming a necessity to continue, it can really water down the experience. So I think that's really
cool. I get it. They got to make money, but also there's so much ad revenue and stuff in there too, right? Like it's just...
Right.
Yeah, I haven't spent a dime on it, and like But I do get on when they get like the special promotions on, like when they had the Shadowbringers thing in, and like you pretty much get
right now it's going on.
Yeah, I was like, I had to get Thancred. Like I had to get in there and just like grind whatever needed to be grinded and get him in there. I love the Gunbreaker job so much that I had to get him into the roster.
This seems like a pretty good segue, actually, if we want to jump over a few and just go into best mobile game of 2020.
Yeah, I mean, Pete was extolling the virtues of Genshin Impact and always will. You can read about Pete Leavitt's rise to ruin if you read his biography, Genshin Impact, How I Shouldn't Have Played It, but I Still Do Anyways. But no, it's... Audra, you're probably our other big player of it. You reviewed it for the site. Why is Genshin Impact stealing Pete's life?
It's pretty fun, actually. I mean, I enjoy playing it just on its own. I try not to get too involved with the monetary stuff. My goal is to not put money into it. So that's how I've been playing it, and it still is totally playable. And just, I like the combat system and how much stuff you can actually do throughout the game. Gliding will forever be fun.
And it looks fantastic. Are you playing it on PC or on phone, or do you dabble between the two?
I actually play it on the PS4, which I think is the weakest version graphically, but it's not too bad.
Oh, that's right. It did come on PS4. And it's we didn't get to dive into it too much. Just Pete was saying again a lot of how great it is, but also be wary it can suck away your life.
Yeah, it can be very time consuming.
Yeah, and we've talked in the past about it and how a lot of that has been bandied about when it first came out too, about how it's the better Breath of the Wild, so to speak. And does that still hold true now that it's not as fresh and as exciting for everybody?
I've never played Breath of the Wild, so I've never been able to compare it.
Okay.
I mean, does someone really say it's better than Breath of the Wild? I mean, I guess maybe. No, I still can't think of how it's better than Breath of the Wild.
I put maybe like 35 to 40 hours in the Genshin Impact, and I played Breath of the Wild as well. And this was actually a game that I was very positive about when I saw it announced, and I was kind of baffled by some of the anger out there regarding it because people were upset that it did look like Breath of the Wild. And I thought that was really weird that people were upset about that.
Yeah, because a lot of games do that.
Yeah, but like Breath of the Wild is one of the best games that's come out in the last decade. Why would you not try to emulate that? You know, if this game moved the gaming industry forward, in order for that to happen, other places have to emulate that. I understand that if it was a total copycat, that might be a problem, but I played it, and it is not as much Breath of the Wild as I thought. It has a very different... I mean, aesthetically, it can be, but the gaming loop is very much more tabletop oriented, I think. And, you have party members.
Interesting.
You have to, worry about your gear and upgrading stats. And, it kind of reminded me of a...
Do your weapons break?
I think that's what sold people.
I don't think they do.
Is that there's no breakable weapons.
I mean, it apparently got people someone mad enough to smash their PS4 to the ground for this game.
Well, that is the worst version, so that's probably a good move.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I don't really get that mentality though. If something like just heavily, like even if like something like straight out rips it off, it's like, do you really think like the game will be a threat to the IP it gets inspired from, especially something like Zelda? It's just like, I just don't see a reason to get angry over it. I mean, there may be reasons.
The game came out on the Switch, right? So Nintendo's making money off of it too, and they're not upset about it.
Yeah, so it's like maybe raise an eyebrow to it or pity it in some ways, but if they still manage to do something that's unique and that very traditional or like a form of formula they clearly took inspiration from, I really don't see a big deal.
I think part of the problem is, there was some controversy about it when it came out based on censorship issues involving Hong Kong, Taiwan. I also think that there is an element of racism about the game in which it was developed by a Chinese developer. And I do recall when the game first came out seeing some crap online about it's just a Chinese knockoff. They're just ripping off like that kind of mentality. They're just ripping off Breath of the Wild. I feel that if you're against Chinese developers of video games, you're going to be in for a bad decade ahead because it's right. Like
Absolutely.
they're going to be developing video games, and their industry is just going to be getting bigger because they have the talent, they have the technology, they have the money.
Yep.
And they're going to be creating some amazing, amazing games over the next decade. And yeah, I absolutely 100% agree with the pushback against it for censorship. But that's almost a separate issue to the level of, I honestly think, racism that was put against the game just because it was developed by the Chinese.
Yeah, that's
what I would have said, Jono, but I didn't want to get into it.
Yeah, I know. It's very random.
It's a good game regardless, though. I mean, I didn't have to pay a penny, and I put 40 hours into it. And I think that's just awesome that, during this year when people are losing their jobs and, they don't have as much money coming in, that they can go play this for free and get a lot of enjoyment out of it. I think that's really cool.
It's a good standalone solid game.
Yeah, I'll say this as someone who put literally over 300 hours into Breath of the Wild. Genshin Impact didn't click with me. I guess I'm just not really thrilled with like the world and characters in it. I do appreciate,
and
like,
that's a big difference that's going to be between the two.
Yeah, the exploration factors and everything seem pretty cool and everything. For some reason, like in the back of my head, I feel like I can see the painting on the wall and like where the game eventually ends up if you actually invest it. Which is, I've seen a couple whales in game who are putting just massive amounts of money just to get like one character in some weird S tier rank type thing, and I'm like, no, I don't want to put myself in that situation at all. And
I can see that. I tried not to put any money down towards it, so.
There really is a tremendous fan community around it, though. The fan art scene and, the characters, even though it is kind of gacha based, that tends to build up this community who loves these characters. And if you go, searching around any fan sites, it is packed. It is a very active fan community.
Because apparently it's a very good game. That's the bottom line.
Yeah, exactly. Tales of Krystoria, I don't think anyone here plays.
Very briefly.
No, I haven't.
To the point where I didn't even know it got released in 2020.
I don't think. I mean, again, there's not a lot of people who are very vocal, if they play them at all, about a lot of the gacha games at the site. I mean, I debated throwing War of the Visions into the ring as well, although I think that came out 2020, or was it just at the tail end of 2019?
I think it was
just the tail end of 2019, actually, it dropped. Yeah. It could have gone into the ring for best ongoing, but it was one of those things where it's like, I should really get around to maybe writing a review for it or something. And I didn't feel right either way throwing that in there. But Krystoria looks neat. People who like Tales and want more Tales.
It's a gorgeous mobile game.
Which I think is a really neat thing we're getting to.
So does this game actually, it's supposed to, because my concern a lot of times is when they take these big franchises and they make mobile games out of it and they try to bill it as, another game in this series. I'm always apprehensive about that because I feel like it's not going to be the same experience, but it's a runner up. So I guess, do we know if it landed with Tales players, like it's a legitimate Tales experience, or?
I could probably speak to that.
I think from what I hear, story-wise, it has a pretty strong story, but like a lot of but you're still going through a lot of the mobile gacha elements while traversing through it. It's not a traditional Tales game by any means, but like if you love the storytelling and world building of Tales games, from what I have read, I heard it does deliver on that.
Well, what's the interesting thing, just what you kind of just touched on there, is the fact that we seem to be entering this interesting golden age with the gacha market now, where the big franchises are starting to jump in on it and realize, oh, there's money to be made here. We can make a smaller scope version of our game, which, take it or leave it as you want as a gamer, there's a part of you that's like, that's cool, but could you just make another mainline series? We'd really like that. But sometimes also it's like, this is the only way we're going to get another Breath of Fire if they decide to do a Breath of Fire gacha. But like,
I think they did do a Breath of Fire.
They did.
Yeah, they did like I think it was like a browser-based one, right?
It was straight out called Breath of Fire 6.
And Arc the Lad.
But you know what I mean, though. Like, we have Dragon Quest Tact coming out. There was the Dragon Quest of the Stars or whatever the heck that one was. And then, there's all the Final Fantasy ones now. I mean, Mario has it for Mario Kart and Mario Run. And, like, there's just so many people trying to seize on the gacha market because they realize that a lot of people are casually playing on their phones. And so we're going to see a lot more of these big things. And I get where you're both coming from, Hat and Eric, with the, is it necessary to get into? That's, we have Octopath coming up. Will that be integral to the story? Will we need to play this free-to-play game to get more of the story? Or is it all just fan service? Is that why people like it so much? Because they're like, hey, there's my favorite character who's now fighting with this other character. That's the only reason I play Final Fantasy Record Keeper.
Yeah, now, to further add to your point, like, people might not like the gacha, but Fire Emblem is so ridiculously popular now because of the contribution of the mobile game that came out.
Well, I was going to say and that's a fair point too, that it's, popularizing these games in ways that wasn't done before. It's expanding the audience, which is really cool. But I guess the thing that depresses me a lot of times though, is these mobile games, they're just not supported after they have their run, and they'll just disappear. I mean, Final Fantasy Mobius, that closed down and you can't even play the game anymore. And there's, Square Enix games like Chaos Rings, that whole trilogy, you basically can't play those anymore. They're nowhere to be found. You can't buy them. You can't download them.
It'd be nice to see a port to it, right?
Yeah, so it's kind of sad.
There's a disposable mindset to a lot of online games, and I 100% agree that it's tragic because some of these games are real quality, and if you are interested in game history, then we're going to be losing a lot of it in the next few years. I remember some great games that came out like on just the iPhone, like in the earlier days, that looked amazing, beautiful pixel art, some great gameplay, and they're gone. They're utterly gone because the developers closed up shop. They couldn't make it, and because of that, those properties just remained in the App Store. And then when when the phone switched over to why am I
new
blanking?
Operating system,
like a new OS.
Yeah, new OSs. There was just no one to update the games, so they're unavailable now. Like, if I go through my iOS purchase history, there are a lot of games that are just grayed out on that I cannot download anymore that I really, really enjoyed, and I kind of wish I, could play again. And some of those games were even before the time of gacha mechanics, and they were like full-fledged playable games, which is kind of, that's part of the tragedy of mobile gaming, is that mobile games and gacha games have kind of become synonymous, which is a problem because a lot of them aren't. I think that it's a weakness of, and believe me, as the head of reviews, this is on me in a lot of ways. RPGFan doesn't cover a lot of mobile games, possibly because it's just so much of it is shoveled out nonstop, and so much of it is terrible. And then occasionally you get a incredible bright spot that's a game that would not just be console worthy, but like one of the best games of the year. And we just don't cover it because we can't find it. There's just too much. I don't know how sites like Touch Arcade manage to review as much as they do, because so much comes out on a nonstop basis.
You would just have to be just focused on just that.
Yeah, look at what came. Let's just take Apple Arcade, for example, which is something that I'm going to be subscribing to in the next year because I bought an Apple Watch and I discovered I love Apple Fitness, so I might as well just get the Apple One package. And hey, Apple Arcade's included. But games...
Not to mention Sakaguchi's game is coming out pretty soon for Apple Arcade.
Temptation.
Yep. Cat Quest 2 came out. Looking through Ocean Quest, or Oceanhorn 2 came out, which, I loved Oceanhorn 1, and Oceanhorn 2 looks pretty dead set to be a 3D traditional Zelda-esque game. In the next year, the sequel to is it Beneath the Steel Sky or Beyond the Steel Sky? The sequel, I can't remember. Shantae and the Seven Sirens came out originally on Apple Arcade this year. There's a
lot of stuff.
There are some amazing games that are coming out, and I think I'm going to put a real effort into 2021 trying to sift through and find some games which very firmly fit into our coverage and which are amazing, but we just don't really cover because, not a lot of people are subscribed to Apple Arcade, and there's just so much out there.
On this note, though, this year, 2020, I believe, was the closure of Terra Battle 2, and that just speaks to how a lot of these games are going away because, I mean, that's the creator of Final Fantasy. If his games can't make it, some of these smaller games are definitely not going to make it in the long run. So
I love Terra Battle 1 so much. Like after I beat the game, I legit gave $20 to them. Like, I didn't use it for anything. Like, I didn't even play the game anymore after it. I just straight out gave them $20, and I was like, the story was awesome, character designs are great, the battle system was
You just gave them a
engaging.
tip. Thanks.
I was like, man, they deserved it. Here's $20. It's a real shame because these games are now gone. And I was hoping they at least put them on Steam or PC and let you play like some kind of paid for version, because they did that with Final Fantasy Dimensions 2. While we never got that in America as a gacha game, it was a gacha game in Japan, and that ended over there, and they decided just to release the full game over here and just let the gacha elements be like a system in the game, and you have ways in the game to grind whatever currency needed for it. Like, I was kind of hoping they'd do that for any games that shut down, but we haven't really seen that happen too much so far.
That's the thing. That's it's a sad day that we've obviously the 3DS is now done, and the PSP. So the hope is that some of the stuff keeps getting ported to stuff like the Switch, where the systems aren't updating so fast that you can always go back. Like, if you want to play Crimson Shroud, which is a game that probably would have been made for mobile these days, you can still go back and download it in the DS store. It's not gone anywhere, even if the developers aren't supporting it, right? So it is a thing. Our other ongoing game, though, speaking of stuff that is ongoing, I mean, Genshin Impact was a big deal, and it sounds like even after your review, Audra, you've kept coming back to it, and it was our runner-up for best ongoing. But Shadowbringers is still our obvious dominator. Zach made the choice this year to kind of switch from best MMORPG to best ongoing to kind of broaden the category and not just make it always Final Fantasy XIV.
A beautiful choice he made.
We don't play a lot different.
Looks like it's my customary time to open up the Steam page for Final Fantasy XIV and look at it longingly throughout the rest of the episode, thinking I could just buy it now and play a little bit of it and see if I like it, and knowing that there's my year.
Yeah. Oh, that's tricky.
Free trial version, man. You can play the main game and have it.
That might be the
all the way to the.
That might be the biggest innovation of this year.
I actually, during the summer, got the PS4 Starter Edition for A Realm Reborn. Started trying that out.
And what are you thinking of it?
It's pretty fun, but I'm nowhere close to getting Shadowbringers yet.
I've been working on it for 6 years. I'll play it for 4 days, and then I won't touch it again for another 6 or 7 months, and then I'll.
It's when I play
there's so much to play.
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you on our podcast, I adore Final Fantasy XIV. I've been playing it almost every day since 1.0 came out, and I've just been following the story and lore of it, and it's something you need to get into. I know a lot of people are like, oh, I just can't overlook the MMO aspects of it. The more you play it, especially
the best writing I've heard.
Getting into Heavensward, you will see that it still plays more like a single-player Final Fantasy game than an MMO. I would say 85% of it is just going through single story content. Then the other 15% is when you actually have to interact with people. But like I said, I'll die on that hill. It has some of the best Final Fantasy stories ever. And I think Shadowbringers has probably the best villain to ever come out in Final Fantasy since Sephiroth.
Those are big words.
Those are big words.
No need to die in the hell. I believe you.
Yeah, I'll die on that hill, man.
Yeah.
Well, Sephiroth might be the contentious one there.
Well, speaking of Sephiroth, he made some appearances on the list. We talked about him yesterday a little bit, but there's another place he showed up, actually.
Yeah, the DLC errand?
The best DLC for 2020, which actually got awarded... Our best DLC for 2020 got awarded to a non-RPG, but seems to be heading in that direction. If they keep adding characters from RPGs, it might as well be in the upcoming years. Super Smash Bros. Ultimate.
Yeah, I was going to... Abe or Wes, Audra, are any of you Smash players?
I have not yet.
A little bit.
I play some Smash here and there.
Have you been keeping up on the latest content or whatever?
I keep up with it religiously, so
so you're pretty stoked for some Sephiroth action and Byleth action?
Oh yeah, man. When Sephiroth got announced at that game show, because I was kind of loathing watching the game show and the first thing they show is Sephiroth, and I start like eating, or I start reading the whole thing. So excited, and like my wife comes and she's like, "What are you screaming about?" I was like, "They put Sephiroth in the game." And then like I'm thinking like Cloud singing like, "Oh man, I can't have one game without this guy being in here with me." But yeah, Sephiroth is pretty awesome in that game. He I don't know where he ranks with like the tournament players or something. I don't really take that into account, but his moveset is awesome. Everything is inspired by moves that he does in the game. Even like his A down move is him coming down from the top, like similar to how a certain someone meets their end in the game.
Spoilers, yeah.
He does exactly like that. He has a lot of fire magic-like moves. If you hit him over 100%, depending on where your stock is, or if you're winning in the game or not, his one wing will come out. That greatly increases your power.
Interesting. While
playing, and his ultimate smash is he turns into Safer Sephiroth, and
awesome.
Does his like meteor move and just annihilates you,
destroys everything. Yeah.
The one cool
blows up the entire world
they put in is for Cloud's ultimate. It's just like I forgot exactly what his normal ultimate smash is, but he has one particularly for Sephiroth. So like at the end of Advent Children, he does the Omni Slash with the multiple weapons. Like he does that to Sephiroth in Smash Bros.
That I feel like is what kind of inspired Noctis's kind of ability in 15.
Yeah. But he's a great character overall. He has a good range to him. If you're someone that likes to play from a distance, he does have a good range move set. So it's a solid character they put in there for sure.
Both of these characters are really heavy commitment characters, which is kind of interesting too. They both take big old swings and leave huge openings, so you have to be kind of like smart and tactical to play as
Wes, have you played with Byleth?
I have. It's interesting because everyone was so scared of having yet another Fire Emblem Sword character. Oh God, please don't do this to me again. And then she comes out and she's completely different. Sorry, she is like the default headcanon. This is how I played Three Houses.
Totally fair.
She's, using all of the primary weapons of all of the other house leaders from Three Houses, which means that most of her attacks involve her switching up her moveset a little bit, and she's got a lot of these really heavy commit heavy moves, and then even her base moveset with her sword isn't quite like, yet another Marth, Roy, Chrom, whoever else clone. She's got that whip sword that gives her a little bit of extra range, a little bit of interesting interaction. It was so interesting to see like the eye roll at yet another Fire Emblem character, and then for her to come out and just be totally different from what we've seen before,
which is very smart for them to do.
Especially because Three Houses was such a big success, it makes sense to get some representation in there, but to do it in a way that people won't be tired of after all these Fire Emblem characters.
It was dicey, no doubt, and still no Waluigi.
I dream.
Too bad. Jono, you are a resident Cadence of Hyrule reviewer and getting into the DLC. I so badly want to play that game. It's on my list of things to do. It just falls by the wayside because I'm like, I could spend the money on it, or I could just keep up on my backlog for the moment. I will get to it someday because just the music is stellar. I want to try that gameplay out. I do have Crypt of the Necrodancer now, so I do want to go back and try that one out first.
It's funny. Since the game came out, I reviewed it. I mean, it was a big surprise announcement at E3 2019, which was 175 years ago. And I really enjoyed it. It's a Zelda game. It's a randomized Zelda game, which is, fantastic for replay value. If you liked Crypt of the Necrodancer, you're probably really going to like Cadence of Hyrule. If you don't like rhythm games, you're going to go crazy trying to play it, because there are a lot of... you have to keep to the rhythm if you want to get the maximum amount of diamonds per screen. I think that the DLC is fantastic. It releases 3 remixes of the already existing soundtrack, 1 chiptune, 1 heavy metal, and 1 dance music. And it's still the same songs, the exact same music, it's just the arrangement of them. But it does provide some nice replay value and provides some nice new files to put on my iPhone. There are a few other quests that are added to it now. 2 full new campaigns, lots of extra characters. I am a big fan of the game. It is not the game that I would say you should download if you're looking for a maximum fulfilling Legend of Zelda feel. If you want that, from what I have heard, I think that Age of Calamity is probably your best bet. But if you are looking for a game that you can play in the margins, like games that you don't need to super put a lot of your energy into and focus, I think it's a great example of that. To be honest, it's a shame that it's just out on Switch. It would work. This is a game that would work extremely well on a touchscreen iOS device, Android, things like that. I think that if they did that, it might actually get even more traction. But that being said, I don't think it deserved the best DLC of the year. I think it's exactly where it deserves to be, in runner-up position.
Yeah, we didn't have there's not a lot of, there was one that came to mind as a piece of DLC that I was like, oh, that could have been a good one as well, and I can't even think what it was. But it's not like we had a big year for a lot of big DLCs. Like, a lot of people were just trying to get their stuff out this year.
I think the only other one I can think of is Cindered Shadows from Fire Emblem Three Houses.
Yep.
Yeah. Which you played for us, if I'm not mistaken.
It's pretty good.
It was, yeah. You gave it a good review. It held up well and added more to that game that was already good.
I was surprised that DLC, for Cindered Shadows, the difficulty was really ramped up, which I really appreciated because, I mean, I played it at normal, the main game, so just having that extra challenge, I got a lot of fun out of it. The battles, though, would take me an hour and a half to 2 hours, so it
felt like an old...
Yeah, it could take a while.
Yeah, I really had to, quarantine some time, or cut out some time to, just be in quarantine and just play one battle,
Thank goodness for the Switch being able to go on standby, I guess, as long as no one in the house wants to use it.
Yeah, I'm still glad I gave Three Houses a second chance, because I fell in love with it a second time, and going through that DLC content was a blast in itself. So yeah, I definitely agree. That's definitely one of the better DLCs Fire Emblem's come out with over the years.
Yes.
Well, it's really nice too, because Three Houses is a game that really benefits from multiple playthroughs. The different arcs that you go through are
of course
sufficiently different, and having an excuse to go back with that DLC and then having those characters for the rest of your playthrough, it really encourages you to go back and play one of the other branches.
So, moving along, Abe, I haven't heard from you recently. What's some stuff that you want to chat about? Because I want to give you a bit of a chance to chit-chat more.
Well, I had my first review for the Falconeer.
Right.
Halfway through a playthrough.
I nominated for best graphics. I feel like that's a game that probably not very many people have played. But
no.
Yeah. But yeah, if you like very picturesque sunsets, it's a very good kind of relaxing game if you just want to fly around. The gameplay is just kind of okay, but it's fun to explore.
Nice. What else on the list have you played? Hades or Chronicles or Xenoblade Chronicles or anything else on the list at the moment?
I don't think anything on the rest of the list.
Gotcha. Now, one thing we did talk about last episode was Hades. It won Best Indie RPG. But our runner-up was a runner-up in two categories, would be Sakuna of Rice and Ruin, which I didn't actually realize was an indie. And then it also took home runner-up for Best Unconventional / Hybrid RPG, which is, again, it's got its weird, wacky kind of farming mechanics, but then it's side-scrolling, arcadey action, RPG action. I don't know if anyone here has played it. I have been. It's so fun. It's a really fun game, and the rice mechanics are so weirdly in-depth and relaxing and interesting. It's a really pretty game. Is it on anyone's radar here?
It's on my radar. Big year last year, so it'll get there.
Well, yeah. Yeah, exactly.
I mean, it's a little intimidating for me, the unique aspects of it, so I've been just waiting till it goes on a big sale to try it out.
Yeah,
that's
on
fair.
my radar,
the esoteric nature of rice farming is so interesting, but it's like, especially when you get to those like rice farming moments, you just feel like you're in a Ghibli movie, just like hanging out in like the era of like My Neighbor Totoro, of like, I'm gonna clean my own rice, I'm gonna plant my rice in the fields, we're all gonna sing rice planting songs as part of the story.
That's something I've been so interested in, because you're not the first person I've heard say that the rice part is so relaxing, and I keep thinking, oh man, this sounds so in-depth, like it's gonna be it's going to be intimidating to get into. It's going to be hard to like. How does that come off as so relaxing to do something so micromanagey?
It's pretty. Like, it's weird. It's in depth, but also light. Like, they do a good job of holding your hand into understanding how the experience works. Because the whole idea with Sukuna is you are a god who has fallen from grace, and she has to help these mortals essentially successfully tame an island, and through that also get a good harvest to reinstate her power as a harvest god and to bring the harvest back to the heavens, because that was part of what happened with her falling out of grace. She basically ruined the god's rice stock, so part of it kind of falls into that. And you only have like the one plantation, which is helpful. So unlike, say, like a Harvest Moon or Story of Seasons, Stardew Valley, where you have multiple plots and so much other stuff to kind of manage that all feeds into the farming is really just kind of its own thing. Some of the other stuff, like you can find things to help you make compost that will better your harvest and stuff, but even if you don't do that, you'll be okay. You'll just get obviously better results if you put a little bit more time and effort into figuring those things out. But they give you a lot of help in terms of, oh, okay, if I put in a bit more water here, it'll help me at this time of day if I let the water drain out. It's the kind of like the satisfaction of still figuring out a new thing, but then also knowing you've done a job well done, which is what I think makes it relaxing. And again, that you just there's enough hints and helps to make it feel like you're doing it all right. And then when you get into the mechanics of like cleaning the rice, preparing the rice, that sort of stuff is it's quick timey and very rhythmic. And is in a way you can like, oh, it's kind of like, you could see where for some people it might be a time waster. For other people, it's just the monotony of it, of just doing the job and seeing the results is reward in and of itself kind of thing. And then you get, the actual reward of getting good rice or unlocking achievements and all that sort of stuff too. And then you can break out that up though very easily by you could ignore it for a season if you really felt like it. It just kind of slows down your pacing in the game as it would in like a Harvest Moon or something like that, where the success of your farm can lead to getting better results with getting to know people around the town. So you can just focus on the action RPG stuff for a bit too, and like either or is kind of the kind of thing you can backseat to whenever you feel you need a break.
That sounds like the exact kind of relaxing life that maybe we all need right now.
And I think that's the other thing too, is it just kind of came at the right time with 2020 and people, liking that escape with Animal Crossing, like just having that slice of life, get away from it all attitude where the stakes aren't very high. You just go in, you plant some rice. Mechanically, I find the rice planting is a little awkward, just the way you have to move, because you're trying to move backwards and position yourself in a weird way, and it doesn't always translate well camera-wise, and you're like, I messed up my spacing, and because that all matters. So, but once you get it, you get it, and my second season, I'm definitely already off to a better start, and then you can also send out your helpers that go to your other fields and stuff eventually too. Like you just have the one field to manage, but you can still, how well that one does, I think, is governs the rest of them. I don't know, I haven't gotten that far into the second year yet. It's got cute animals, like I just got a Shiba Inu that's hanging out on the farm now that you can pick up and cuddle and stuff and rub its belly. The characters are endearing. The other thing that's also surprisingly in depth is like the cooking system, where you don't cook, there's someone that does it for you, but you still have to give her the right ingredients, and that kind of governs how happy everybody is for things. And there's always these really nice conversations around the dinner table that are well put together and thoughtful. It teaches you a bit of the history of rice, the history of the culture, because I think it's rooted in Japanese mythos.
It seemed like
I believe. And so you learn a bit of the divide between the heavens and the mortals and how that all works. Like it's just interesting. It's like you're playing through kind of like a history lesson in such an interesting way.
I didn't realize that there's actual history rooted in that game. I thought it was a fantasy world for some reason. So that's cool. That makes me more intrigued to pick it up.
Like it's definitely a fantasy in so much of it, but I feel like it is rooted in real world things. But I haven't done the research, so you don't quote me on it. Like I don't know if these are real true gods represented in it, but it does. But what I've seen touched on in other parts of Japanese media,
sure,
is it seems like it is rooted at least in their mythology and and methods and such like that.
Yeah.
Their creation
Okay.
mythos. But yeah, so anyways, if you do want something that's just like this weird mishmash, Cocoon of Rice and Ruin is kind of the way to go. I mean, I think I threw Star Renegades, which I will keep standing so hard on this podcast right now, in there as like a nice little hybrid between like tactical and sort of like the point and click adventure and whatever. But these both are good games. The winner, of course, was Moon, which we had never seen over on Western Shores, and it's, you know, touted as like the anti-RPG, the weird sort of idea that you're kind of against like the typical RPG protagonist is now kind of the antagonist, and you're trying to save all the monsters that this person's going around unconditionally murdering. Wes, I know you've played a bit of it. Isaac was our reviewer on it, but I want to get to it. Is it as good as was worth waiting for?
It is this utterly unique, beautiful game about kindness and love, which is not something you get very often, where at no point are you trying to fight monsters. You're leveling up, but you're leveling up by helping people, by making connections with people. It's got this amazing, gorgeous soundtrack that's super ambient. It's beautiful. It looks very much of its time. It's one of those like kind of PS1 era 2D games that has a distinctive style you can't really shake. The localization is absolutely beautiful. And I mean, people have been hearing about this forever, and actually getting the chance to play it and have it like so lovingly brought together is a real treat to spend time with.
It looks, yeah, like you're saying, like that's one thing that really stands out is just how unique it looks and how that does feed into the unique perspective of the game itself. And it's not, it's cool to have this game come out now that we also know that Toby Fox was heavily inspired by this game, and you can definitely see it in doing a pacifist run of Undertale, where that came from.
Yeah, this game looks absolutely fascinating. I've never really heard of it much. I'm definitely intrigued to try it. The main character really reminds me of Rayman a lot, I guess.
Yeah, there's a very Rayman aesthetic to a lot of it.
Yeah, not just the character design alone, just like the aesthetics and everything. And I mean, this screams PlayStation 1 in so many ways.
The animations are so like beautiful and over the top, and like it's got that early not quite voice acting that you get out of like the Banjo Kazooies of the world, where it's got, exactly kind of thing. And everyone's got their own unique
like
voice.
Animal Crossing,
combined with their super over the top expressions. It just, you feel like a part of this kind of cartoon world, and there's story reasons for a lot of the crazy aesthetics in it, but it all plays into like you feel like a kid sucked into his video game system.
Like Captain N.
Yeah. Maybe slightly more artistically redeeming than Captain N, but I know it's a tight line to draw.
But it's yeah, and I guess that also counts as kind of being a re-release in a way.
Yeah.
But also not. But yeah, this was also a big year for remakes, re-releases, and obviously Final Fantasy VII won that category, as we mentioned last episode, and it was a hard one to top. I threw my hat in the ring with Trials of Mana because I loved that remake.
Fantastic
remake as well.
Game. Fantastic game.
And I don't know. I mean, Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition was our runner-up, and that's a hard game to top in many ways because it was definitely hindered in many ways by its time. Because, and I would say that is exclusively graphically. I mean, they may have streamlined some of the gameplay mechanics a bit if it was released in a modern era. And it looks great. Like, I got to cover it on the Switch, and it looks fantastic now. But, I don't know, it didn't really innovate. It's like, it's more just a re-release with just a polished version. Whereas, why I liked putting Trials of Mana into the ring was that it innovated on its predecessor as a re-release and being more of a remake.
If I could touch on this a little bit, Xenoblade Chronicles, the original, is one of my favorite RPGs of all time. I loved it.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
And so for that reason, I think it's awesome that it came out this year. But I agree with you in that some of the added features, there are good features that were added. The extra content at the end of the game, being able to track the quests. Some of the new soundtrack is really cool too. The new environments look gorgeous, but but it wasn't like enough new material for me personally, for me to be comfortable saying that it was the best remake of the year. And some of the stuff I was kind of in the middle on too, where, the added soundtrack's cool, but some of the songs I preferred the original. Some of the newer ones were better. The added story bit at the end is good, but it's not amazing. So, and even the art style
kind of fell flat for a lot of people at the end there.
Yeah.
It dances on that fine line of being a remaster and a remake because a lot of it's not been touched in some aspects, but at the same time, I think like where the important stuff really matters, they hit really hard on, like the UI interface, just its revamp. Just to me, that alone makes it the definitive edition.
I guess what I was getting at was just the added material. If I look at only the added material, it's good, but it's not as exceptional as I would say 7 Remake or the complete revamp with Trials of Mana.
Whereas I agree.
Is just an improved experience.
It doesn't. The game's not different enough or like changed significantly enough that I feel like it tops other games of 2020. Like you said, Trials of Mana is just like a full-on remake. And just in every sense of the word, like a faithful remake on top of that.
Yeah.
To speak briefly to that epilogue content, though, this might be me calling my shot a little bit because I've seen how the Xeno games have evolved over the years. But I am highly suspicious that epilogue content is going to be a lot more meaningful once we see whatever Xenoblade Chronicles 3, whatever form that is. Seeing how like the meta narrative of this has evolved. While that doesn't help this as a game like this year, there is a part of me that's very excited to see, okay, there were little hints and teases about things that I get the feeling will be a lot more weighty in the future.
Yeah, it's an interesting theory. I kind of just looked at it as something I felt like that didn't necessarily need to be answered, but, I guess it's nice they did. Because in the game, like what happened ultimately to the remaining High Entia wasn't really touched upon, and or Amelia's story wasn't really ended per se. So it was nice that we did get this kind of content, but at the same time, I don't think anyone was screaming for it either. So maybe there are some ties to a future game, and maybe this is like all a long-term plan.
Yeah, totally fair. Abe or Audra, did either of you play the original on the Wii?
Yeah, I was actually going to say, I think, wasn't the original game kind of hard to find? I remember in the US, at least, it was like a GameStop exclusive or something.
And it was part of the Operation Rainfall, or whatever it was?
Yeah, I feel like maybe part of the reason it could stand as a remake is because maybe just a lot of people didn't play the original game.
That's fair.
That's true, and not a lot grabbed it on the 3DS.
I had a hard time
because you needed the new
myself.
3DS for that.
Yeah.
I did play part of it on the Wii, and then I ended up, I think, selling my copy somehow. I liked it, but then it was too difficult at times, so...
It's very over... It was really pushing that machine, and it was very much ahead of its time for that machine. In, again, the same vein as I could see, like, Final Fantasy XII was like that for the PlayStation 2. Like, there's always those machines... there's always those games I find at near the end of a life cycle that just gets really ambitious and really goes for gusto, and the original Xenoblade Chronicles was definitely that. And yeah, that's a valid point that you bring up, Abe, that maybe it's just the accessibility won it over for a lot of folks, that people could finally play it for the first time now, and it's definitely like the definitive version for sure.
Yeah, before the Switch version came out, the most accessible way to get it was the Wii U digital shop, I think. It was available on there with the classic controller, but then again, a lot of people didn't buy the Wii U either. So I guess the Switch is technically not the most accessible means of getting that game.
I remember it was also the only new 3DS exclusive.
Yeah. Well, one of the benefits, to speak to what you said, Audra, is that this new version has more difficulty settings, which is yet another like nice little accessibility touch. Accessible in more ways than one, that this might be something that people have an easier time completing, between quality of life improvements, difficulty settings.
Yeah, I do have a copy of it, just so that I can try it again.
It's definitely the way to do it then.
I'm curious, and we don't have to linger here too long, but on the Xenoblade Chronicles, the Definitive Edition, how did you all feel about? It seems like most people were pretty positive about the revamp on the art, and I thought the colors and the environments looked great. A lot of the characters looked great, but perhaps it's just me, but I felt that Shulk, with them smoothing out his face, I felt like he looks a lot younger in certain shots, and it kind of It took me a while to get used to that. So
The artwork is certainly a lot. Yeah, it's certainly a lot cleaner than the original. So I guess it can come off weird that way. The original designs come like the way it's converted to polygon sprite characters. It reminds me kind of how they translated Vagrant Stories art to the character models in that game. So it seems kind of weird now. You kind of have that the art style isn't as converted as faithfully to Xenoblade as it was originally, but it's still a matter of taste because I think the characters still look really appealing in their own right. It was kind of the same with Radiant Historia. There's like a big controversy of the new art look good or not, right. But they still look really good in their own right. But it comes down to a matter of taste. I don't think either look bad.
They probably thought he just looked too old to take down God, so they needed to bring him down to like a few years, 15 or so.
Real RPG
He had to be 12.
Full circle on this cast.
Yeah, it's just him and Ryan are supposed to be like best friends, and I think Ryan is technically only like a year older than him, so but there were points, certain shots, it just, usually from a little bit far away, he would look a little bit younger to me than I remembered. So, but that was the only thing. I thought overall it looked great.
Yeah, he's got to be naive.
Although speaking of the graphics, like the original Xenoblade Chronicles, I thought had a pretty unique look, even though it was kind of ugly. Even though it kind of looked terrible, but
That's
I feel like that was a little bit that unique look was a little bit lost in going with the more traditional anime style with the newer game.
I suppose. I don't know. It's for me. I just mostly was taken away by just the environments getting the full treatment they deserved.
Yeah, the environments are a huge step up for sure.
It let me play dress up better too, which I was excited about.
It at least didn't go into like Xenoblade Chronicles 2 territory, anime looking. There's still that fine line there with the first Xenoblade, at least.
Sure. Yeah, fair enough. Well, that's we're going to wrap things up at least with our main awards on that one, because we've talked it all out for the most part. I mean, I don't think we really got too much into, but we all should expect that Final Fantasy XIV still has a fantastic soundtrack. Like, there's no surprises. It was up there with Final Fantasy VII, and none of us have really played Hades, but Again, the characters are great. We talked a bit about that last episode. But yeah, we've kind of hit all the points there. But where we want to shift focus over to, because like Jono said, we have a lot of folks on the cast today who did up a lot of the individual award write-ups. And I'm gonna cherry pick a bit so we can kind of get through things. Because we also did manage to actually bring up some of people's individual awards in some of the different categories where they differed on where we landed as a site, and also based on what you have or have not played. But Abe, you didn't do any of the write-ups for the individual awards.
No, I didn't. Last year was a little busy for me, so I didn't feel particularly.
Yeah, but that's why I wanted to give you the floor right now, because one thing that you did cover this year with your first review was the Falconeer, and I guess, is that your best RPG of 2020?
No, no way.
Well, tell us about it a bit, and then I also want to ask you then, like, what is your favorite RPG of 2020 after the Falconeer?
It would still be Final Fantasy VII R for me. It was, it was the nostalgia. Nostalgia did it for me, really. But also the combat was really, really unique, and sorry, that might be all I have.
Oh, that's all good. So so for you, it was just mostly the combat that dragged you in. One thing we talked about yesterday a lot too was with the new story, like the characters and such were a lot better as well. Is that one thing that grabbed you, or is it mostly just like the gameplay and the nostalgia revisit?
For sure. I did like the improvements to the story. I liked the side stories with the Avalanche crew, and as I wrote, there was
they got more.
There's a pretty neat ghost story in the train graveyard that wasn't in the original game. So a lot of the a lot of the additions to the story hit for me. It made going through Midgar a blast all over again.
Mm-hmm. No doubt. And then the other one, like I said, your first review was the Falconeer, which, I mean, we gave best visuals to Final Fantasy VII R, and I'm guessing for you, the Falconeer wouldn't trump that, or or is
It would
even,
not.
is this its own thing?
I thought it was good enough looking that it deserved at least just a recognition of being nominated.
An honorable mention.
It's a beautiful game. I can't say that enough times, I guess.
Would it fall with like under the unconventional category? In terms of how gameplay? I haven't looked at it enough, but it feels like it's not like your standard RPG.
Well, I started into it, and I almost felt like mentioning that I'm not really sure it counts as an RPG. It's honestly more of a flight simulator. That's really the genre I would match it closest to.
Oh, interesting! Like a flight sim,
the
adventure game.
There are RPG elements, but they're very light.
Looking at it, it's giving me a Panzer Dragoon Star Fox vibe to it.
Not really. It's because it's more open than that, I guess. If you played like Star Wars Squadrons, that's probably the closest thing I can come to think of to compare it to.
I just got that for Christmas. I'm looking forward to diving into that. Well, shifting over to everyone else's awards as well, I'm going to kind of cherry pick out of it as well. Because I want to hear about some of the alternative stuff, because we've talked, like I said, a bit about some of the regular categories here. I mean, Audra, one of your top RPGs this year was Dragon Quest XI's, which is, again, falls kind of under the remake, re-release sort of stage. But one thing I am interested to hear a bit more about was your favorite indie title, Planet Stronghold 2.
I love Planet Stronghold 2.
Why?
It was a really fun VN traditional RPG hybrid, I thought.
Interesting. Yeah, I definitely would not have pegged it anywhere as a VN.
Yeah, they the story presentation to a visual novel mode, if you'd like to, which was a little weird to me, and I mentioned it in my review.
Oh, interesting. Did you ever play the first one? Which, again, I've never heard of this series until Planet Stronghold 2.
I did play the first one. I thought they improved pretty much everything about it in the Planet Stronghold 2, so I quite like it.
And it's from an indie developer. What else have they done? Or is Planet Stronghold and 2 their kind of foray into the
Actually,
the
they're
industry?
the ones who made Winterwolves made Lauren the Amazon Princess, which is a pretty popular indie RPG that came out a couple years ago, I think. And
I was going to say, I'm out of the loop on that one. I don't even know if we covered it. There's a retro RPG review for you.
Hey, if you want to cover it, it's all yours.
I think there is a review for it.
Either way, so did you feel like this is gonna kind of give them steam with this series?
As far as I know, it may have been too big of a project for them.
Oh.
So now they're changing how they're handling the Lauren sequels are becoming like smaller side stories, just because it took so long to develop this game and to get the characters and script size.
Yeah, it looks like it took them a full 2 years between their previous game, Cursed Lands, and Planet Stronghold.
It may have just been a bigger title than they had expected it to be.
And for Dragon Quest XI, did you jump in like right when that game first came out, or did you hold off just for reasons, and then once 11S was announced, you was like, well,
obviously I'd go for that one, was my mentality.
Gotcha. But it's been good to get into. I mean, Bob gave it a great review. Everyone has loved the definitive version. Did you do it on Switch, or did you get the PS4 one?
I reviewed it on Switch.
Oh, that's right. That was you who did that. And yeah, you were also high on it as well. That's
yeah,
right.
I was pretty...
Now that I'm looking at your review.
Can't say too much wrong about it.
Yeah, it seems to be probably one of the best Dragon Quest experiences out there. Jumping over to Hat and Eric. Hat, what was your your best moment of 2020 for gaming? Like, what was the big thing you were most excited about this year?
It's a little bit controversial, but I'll try to weave in and out of that. But
I like it, seedy.
Yeah, honestly, I know there's a lot of negativity on Cyberpunk, but I picked that up, and that was just the best moment for me this whole year. I played on PC, and I have a pretty good PC, so I did not experience majority of the issues that other people were having. And I think all those criticisms that people bring up are totally fair and worth talking about. And CD Projekt Red deserves all their criticism that they're getting in many regards. But for me...
Which you've done an episode on.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's a whole nother conversation of itself. So, but the game itself, I really like The Witcher 3. So being able to experience, I played Witcher 3 much later. And so to be able to experience this at launch over like a break I had for the holidays and just being able to get just so absorbed into that world and, the world building, the handcrafted, uh, feel of the game was just more than I expected. And I guess like it seems to me like they focused on all the things that I like in RPGs, but the things I don't really care about, such as, whether or not V has graphics to eat sushi or can V blow the tires out of a car. Those things are immersive, but I don't care. So in
That's
all the
fair.
ways that I liked the story, the characters, the world building, it was just a great experience for me on PC. So
Yeah, and I had the same experience, and same with Tucker, which is why exactly you can't take the review without taking in the greater issues, but also if you're having a good experience, you're having a good experience.
It seems to me that Cyberpunk 2077 could be, if it continues, the best game released in 2021, but unfortunately it wasn't. It was released in 2020.
Yeah, if they get it right. Eric, my question for you, just again drawing on some of the more personal stuff, is there any hidden gems that we haven't talked about or you've heard about that you're just like, people need to know about this from 2020?
Yeah, well, I think people know about this, but I just haven't heard it talked about much, and it's one of the best games I played this year, and it was Paper Mario the Origami King.
Oh, yeah. Gwen got it for Christmas, and I want to dive in so bad, and I haven't yet.
It is a really good game. When I saw the trailer for it, I was like immediately excited for it, and I'm a big fan of the series, and this particular title, they really did a good job balancing the traditional RPG aspects, and at the same time continuing their philosophy of, we don't just simply want to make some kind of traditional RPG, we want to add some kind of interesting flair to it. And there's a lot of controversy about Sticker Star, and Color Splash and the way they did things. But they went to a very interesting system this time where each battle is like a puzzle instead of just simply turn-based. And at the beginning, it's very simple to line up the enemies and put them in the way you want to. But by the end of the game, like, you're scratching your head sometimes and you're on a timer to get these enemies lined up in the way. And they kind of formed themselves up to make it look more complicated than it is. And it catches you off guard a lot. And of course, the bosses, too, are very engaging, very strategic, and very engaging battles that you kind of need to think outside the box to get the fight done. And on top of that, the world is very colorful, very beautiful. The story's very humorous. There's a lot of stuff in it you'll laugh to easily. So the humor is great. And it brought a lot of the exploration factor that Paper Mario is known for back into the game. So, I mean, it's a very solid Paper Mario RPG, and it blows the previous two games out of the water.
Nice. Wes, looking at your individual awards, you're a basic bitch.
I am.
In that you took all the big hits from we talked about on last episode were essentially your top 3 this year. So you played like all the big obvious ones alongside your PSL. But yeah, like I guess my question for you is, was that coming down to just the fact that that's all you got to play this year, or have you played some other outliers and you're like, no, they are deserving?
It was a mix of things. One of the things that I absolutely adore are games that kind of take big risks and do pretty unique things, and I think all 3 of those, Hades, 13 Sentinels, and Final Fantasy VII remake, which is not the order I put them in. They all kind of swung for the fences and did something unique, and impressively, usually I love the games that try for it and fail, but all 3 of them I think kind of nailed it. Which made me incredibly happy. But there were also a few games that like I'm still playing through right now, so I didn't feel comfortable putting them on my list. Like last week I finished Eichenfell, which easily could have ended up on my top 3. Absolutely beautiful little indie RPG. Unlike a lot of things that are out there, especially in the indie space. as well as the aforementioned Yakuza Like a Dragon. I slow roll Yakuza games so badly, so it'll be, sometime in March when I finish it. I will have nothing but glowing things to say about it.
Your next year's your 2020 individual awards will be like, I wish I played this in 2020 award goes to.
I think I could do that every year.
Yeah, and that's the thing, right? Looking at my individual awards, there's a lot of that too. What old game did I finally play and I really like? One thing, because I know personally a bit more about your life in that regard, and I don't know if anybody else here also has kids, but for yourself with your kids, do they play RPGs?
They're not quite old enough. My oldest is starting to get there, though. I did play through the Paper Mario Origami King with them, though. Voice acted it all for my son, who couldn't read.
Wonderful.
And had an absolute blast with them.
Yeah, does your son often watch you play games? Like, was there any this year that they were just like super stoked, or is just this kind of your first experience with Origami King?
They're getting more and more interested. Mario RPGs help because my son is a huge Mario fan, but they know their chocobos and their slimes at this point. So I played Dragon Quest XI-S this year too. I had played the original, but this time they were a lot more interested because they'd seen all of the slime memorabilia throughout the home and kind of understood it. Anything with chocobos. So like I played Chocobo's Mystery Dungeon this year, which I think was a 2019
Oh, wonderful.
game. The Everybody release, but
I want to play that one with Gwen.
Also landed really well with them because it's just adorable and has all of these little monsters they've seen before. So
that's great. Yeah, Crystal Chronicles has been kind of a hit with Gwen. Her and I haven't played together in a bit, but it was one that she definitely enjoyed having an opportunity to play with me, and she's always very curious about all games all the time. And is it appropriate? Does it have swears? Can I? Stuff like that.
That's the balance. That's why so many things like Yakuza are still being played, is because gotta wait for the 2 hours after they're in bed. Then I'm focused.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the same with me. And then she gets into so many questions about everything that she's like, "Can I just play the game?" But I think Super Mario RPG was the first game her and I played through together as well. Actually, Legend of the Seven Stars.
Yeah, and
then we did Paper Mario together, and we did Trials of Mana this past year. We finished together as well, with her actually playing with me this one.
Oh, that's fantastic.
It was
Mario
fun,
RPG
and we voice acted
like the
together.
Perfect beginner's RPG.
Mm-hmm. So it's cool.
Just planting those nostalgia seeds for Mario.
Right, exactly. Yeah, she's definitely hit. But right now, again, it's all Roblox all the time now. But she still plays more into the RPG end of it all. So
when it's all they see, they can't avoid it all the time.
Rounding out the show with Jono over here, because Jono kind of got to give us what his obvious favorite was last episode. So my question for you, Jono, and it may not necessarily mean that the game was awful or broken or anything like that, but what was your worst gaming experience of 2020?
Oh my god. Jeez, let me look at my review backlog for this one. Blocked out some. Whenever you say worst experience, my mind instantly goes to Fallout 76, but that was years ago.
I know,
even though I tried
but you
it again
spoke
this year.
pretty highly of it this year.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't really have a lot of astoundingly bad experiences playing games this year.
No.
Maybe just the rest of the year put the video games into sharp relief, but there was nothing that made me specifically, I guess, feel, I'm wasting my time on this game. I say that as I look through what I've played this year. 5 remastered, 4 remastered, 3 remastered. No, I've had a pretty good year in games, to be completely frank.
So there you go. If you had to pick a least favorite child, which one would you pick?
If I had to pick a least favorite child? Oh no, they're going to be so crushed. If I had to pick a least favorite child, I think I might actually pick, and you're going to be surprised by this, I think I might pick Murder by Numbers.
Yeah, I can see that, actually. I mean, it is a bit surprising because you were pretty high on it, but I can also see why.
I liked Murder by Numbers. I thought it was a great game. I thought it was fun.
We're not saying it's a bad game.
I think it was fun. I thought it was I love Picross, but I thought that in the end it was fairly disposable in terms of the storyline and things like that. It could be different if they pick up a sequel and they expand on it a little bit, but as it was, it's a bit derivative. It was a nice light piece of fluff. It was by no means like one of the best games I played in 2020. I think one of the best games I played in 2020, irritatingly enough, I played after we did the list, and I haven't talked about it on the show yet. Called it's It's a game called There Is No Game. Has anyone heard of it?
Yeah, I've heard of it.
It's a point-and-click adventure game, sort of. It's a deconstruction of a point-and-click adventure game that parodies LucasArts classic adventure games. It parodies Zelda. It parodies gacha games beautifully. It's a bit more in the spirit of games like the Stanley Parable. And if you like that sort of thing, if you like a game that deconstructs traditional gameplay, I think that you should pick it up. I was very impressed by it. It's not a long game. I played it in an afternoon, but it was a fun afternoon. And if I could, that would have ended up in my vote for best adventure game. Unfortunately, I played it just after 2020 was over. So,
darn. And then finishing things off, then I didn't speak to mine last time either. But I would still say
Renegades.
I think my most...
Sorry, what?
Yeah, I was going to say, I think for me, Star Renegades was probably my most memorable experience, closely followed by Trials of Mana. Those two are definitely my big hits from this last year. Star Renegades caught me kind of from left field. Like, I had a feeling I'd like it from its visual presentation, but I was not expecting to get as addicted and into the gameplay experience as I did. And if I didn't have other games to work on and other duties to do for the site, if I was just a gamer playing games, I'd probably still be diving back into it like I did with FTL. Like, it's just got that addictive loop of as the roguelike in it. The game plays great, looks amazing. The combat is so fun. Like, I can't recommend it highly enough. And then as I said, Trials of Mana, which we talked a bit about, reiterated what it was doing really, really well. I still love the original, but this one brings enough newness. It's just so fun. My next question to everybody as we finish off the episode is going to be, like, if you could recommend one game from 2020 that if it's on special or whatever, that someone has to buy it now. So for me, I would just say, like, give Star Renegades a chance. Massive Damage from Ontario did a fantastic job. Pick that one up. That's my recommendation right now. If you see it on Steam sale or whatever, get it. Well, Jono, we'll finish with you. I'll go over to Abe. What's your one recommendation? Buy it now.
I know I said Final Fantasy was my favorite game, but it's got to be Yakuza, really. I know everyone here has played it, but I think it has some breakout appeal for people who haven't played Yakuza games. My wife started playing it, and it was her first Yakuza game, and now she's going through all the other ones. So, yeah, definitely. That sleeper hit, Yakuza, I guess.
Wes, what do people have to buy based on your recommendation from 2020?
Well, I'm worried I'm going to have to be the basic one, because I don't think anyone else here is going to, but you got to play 13 Sentinels. You just have to. It's required. You're going to be tested on this. I don't think that's a bad
basic one. It's left field enough that, like, it seems to be that one that if someone's on the edge of that genre, this could be the one to really make them interested, or it could be the only one they ever play and they won't be unsatisfied.
Yeah, you're not going to play something like this again. It's something wholly unique in nearly every respect, so go buy it, play it.
Eric, buy it now. What is it? What do we need from 2020 based on your recommendation?
Man, Hades, most definitely. That is one of the best action titles of the year. Even if you're not into roguelike games, this game may change your mind with how it mixes the narrative with the rogue experience. It's a top-notch game. Highly recommend it, even if not on sale, but if it's on the sale, just that much better.
Beautiful. Hat, you know where we're going with this?
Well, I was going to say Crosscode. I think the music is fantastic. Go check out the soundtrack if you're not going to buy the game, but buy the game. It's got great pixel art. Feels like a modern Super Nintendo game. Great story. 40-hour indie game. We don't get a lot of those. And it's an enjoyable time. Check it out.
A lot of room to grow, too.
It wasn't the best optimized on the Switch, but...
I got it on
pretty much get it anywhere, though.
And Switch. PC is definitely the way to go, but they're working on a Switch version. So I don't know if they ever fixed it, but...
I got to give a quick colorblind warning to shout out to my other people. Just keep an eye, do a little bit of research if you're colorblind. Look into Crosscode. It looks amazing, but unfortunately I cannot get through a lot of the bosses.
Ooh. Be dizzying, I suppose. And Jono, round us out. What's the Jono recommendation that isn't Spelunky 2?
It isn't Spelunky 2. looking ahead, I would say keep an eye out for Rogue Legacy 2.
That's right, yeah, because you're still playing.
I played
that.
early access. It's being developed. They're shoving more and more and more and more content into it. I think it's going to be really something special for 2021. But if you want my best value, if you see it on sale, buy it. 2020 game. Get the Yakuza Remastered Collection. It has 3, 4, and 5. 3 and 4 are solid games. They're great. I suspect that people are going to be hearing Solosi talk about both of them at great length in the near future. But Yakuza 5 is mind-blowingly good in my opinion, and it actually might have my favorite game moment in 2020, which was the full-blown idol simulator. My God, I had so much fun playing Haruka's chapters in that game.
I love it. Well, thank you, everybody. This was a bigger episode. Thank you, everyone, for listening and bearing out. We've been doing a good job of keeping our episodes even under 90 minutes for the most part. Like, we're trying to keep things down around an hour. These 2 episodes combined are going to be like just a touch over 3 hours. So thanks for coming in for this big 2-part series. It's better than last year's, what was it, like almost 6-hour extravaganza or whatever it was. It was ridiculous. We did a good job, everybody. So thank you for being on and helping manage this conversation quite well between the 6 of us. 7 of us? 6 of us.
7.
7 of us. Jeepers. Yeah.
7 including you.
Yeah. I'm not counting myself. And it was great having Hat and Eric of the Phoenix Edge podcast, having you both here for the first time. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having us. It was a blast.
It's on that note, I will segue into our official closing since we didn't really do it on part 1. Now that we bring part 2 to a close, we do have other podcasts to listen to, and we've been paired up with Hat and Eric of the Phoenix Edge podcast. Have we hit a year? We're over a year now, haven't we? Since you've
I think we're maybe 15 months, something like that.
Yeah,
time's flown by.
What do listeners have to look forward to for you, like the next episode or 2, if you want to tease?
Yeah, so last week we just did our 2020 RPGs, but generally we try to cover more game-related topics, such as, the things like with mobile gaming or is Royal Editions, is that a thing that we should be happy for, and things along that nature. But next week, I think that we're still working it out, but I think we're going to be touching some of the Final Fantasy remake Ever Crisis leak thing that's out there in the ether. I still have to research it, but we're gonna talk some about that, and probably after that we'll talk about 2021 RPGs we can expect. So
we do occasionally talk about standalone title games also. A few weeks back we just did a full 2.5 hour discussion on Super Mario RPG for Super Nintendo. So if you like to go back on more classic games, we do time to time dive into those type of games like Dragon Quest V, Knights of the Old Republic. If you want to hear us talk about those standalone games, we do episodes like that also.
Nice. And speaking of which, we also have Retro Encounter that people can listen to if you want those as well, which is RPGFan's dedicated podcast to that and other random topics that usually involve old games that a lot of us old people play here. And we also have Rhythm Encounter is back, has been going pretty steadily along now since its revival. We've had some great episodes come out, a lot of fantastic music. We just covered an episode that is kind of making up for the gaps since Rhythm Encounter went on its hiatus, so they're looking back at what music did they miss, and that's coming up soon if it hasn't already dropped by this recording. And thank you so much, everybody. You can email us questions, concerns, spare potions, as we say, over at podcast@rpgfan.com. You can harass me at gdelmage, Greg Delmage, pretty much anywhere on the internet, and I'm gdelmy on our Discord. Jono is available through his what's the word I'm looking for? His email address. Jono, people can harass you for reviews.
jlogan@rpgfan.com, or you can hit me up on Twitter at JonoLogan.
Yep, and otherwise, everybody else you can find in our About Us staff page, because it'll add another 10 minutes if we go through everyone's social handles, since there's so many of us. Thank you, everybody, once again for being on the show. It's so nice to get all of you new voices on here. Everybody that is new to the podcast and will hopefully be returning. We haven't scared you away. For myself, for Jono, for everybody here, have a good one, everybody. Thanks for listening, and bye now.
Bye.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
See ya.
Bye.